Ethan Harper, the founder of Skypath Airlines, who, after a life-changing encounter on a flight with his daughter, Chloe, decides to change the entire culture of his company. Together, they start the Kindness Connection, a program designed to make every passenger feel seen, valued, and respected. But as Skypath's employees and even passengers begin to adapt to this new vision, Ethan and Chloe encounter unexpected challenges, skepticism from within, a high-stakes PR crisis, and personal sacrifices. As the Kindness Connection grows, its impact stretches far beyond Skypath, even inspiring acts of compassion worldwide. But will Ethan and Chloe be able to keep Skypath's values alive in the face of these obstacles? And what will it take for kindness to truly take flight? If you're excited to see how this inspiring journey unfolds, hit subscribe for more stories just like this one. Let us know in the comments. What do you think it would take to transform a whole company with kindness? Now, let's dive into the story. The mid-morning sunlight filtered softly through the windows of Ethan Harper's office, casting a golden hue on the walls decorated with photographs of airplanes, his family, and awards for outstanding service. Ethan leaned back in his chair, his mind tracing the years that had brought him here, from a small, modest upbringing in the Midwest to running one of the fastest-growing airlines in the country, Skypath Airways. Skypath wasn't just his career. It was a legacy built on values passed down to him by his parents and amplified by his own life experiences. Ethan often told his team that Skypath's mission went beyond transporting passengers. It was about providing a journey marked by kindness and respect, an environment where every traveler felt like more than just a ticket number. These values were especially important to him because of one very special person, his 13-year-old daughter, Chloe. Since his wife's passing 10 years ago, Chloe had been Ethan's anchor and his reason for pushing through the long, relentless hours that came with running an airline. Chloe, with her wide, curious eyes and an empathy that was rare for her age, was a reminder of everything good and hopeful in the world. She had his wife's smile, her compassion, and recently, her determination to stand up for what was right. Sometimes, Ethan worried that he worked too much, that he missed some moments he couldn't get back. But every evening, Chloe reassured him that he was her hero. That morning, Ethan opened his laptop and checked the date. He smiled, feeling a spark of excitement. Tomorrow, he'd take Chloe on a special trip to New York City, a father-daughter weekend filled with sightseeing and adventure. Chloe had never been to New York, and he couldn't wait to show her the skyline, the museums, and maybe a Broadway show. More than that, he hoped this trip would give them both a chance to reconnect, away from the demands of the office and school. As he confirmed their seats on Skypath Airways, he thought again about his airline. Skypath had grown quickly over the past few years, and in many ways that growth was thrilling. But as the company expanded, he'd started hearing stories, hints that the values he'd worked so hard to instill were beginning to slip. He frowned, pushing the thought aside. Tomorrow was about Chloe and New York. The airline could wait for one weekend. Ethan arrived home that evening with takeout from their favorite pizza place and a mischievous grin. Chloe, still in her school uniform and reading at the kitchen counter, looked up and tilted her head curiously. "What's with the smile, Dad? I thought we could use a little getaway," he replied, setting the pizza box on the table. "How would you feel about a weekend trip to New York City?" Chloe's eyes widened, her face lighting up with excitement. "Really? Just us?" "Just us," he confirmed. "You, me, and the Big Apple." The next morning, as they packed for their trip, Chloe could hardly contain her enthusiasm. Her mind raced with images of skyscrapers, bustling streets, and everything she'd read about the city in books. It wasn't just the destination that excited her. It was the idea of being with her father, uninterrupted, exploring someplace new together. They arrived at the airport, and Ethan watched Chloe's wonder as she took in the bustling atmosphere of the terminal, her eyes darting from the departure boards to the travelers hurrying along. To her, the airport was a magical place, a gateway to adventures waiting beyond the horizon. As they approached the check-in counter for Skypath Airways, Chloe held her father's hand, her mind already racing ahead to the city that awaited them. Chloe and Ethan found their seats in Skypath's first-class cabin. As she settled in, Chloe pulled a worn paperback from her backpack, one of her favorites. She cracked it open, losing herself in its pages, oblivious to the hum of passengers around her. A few minutes later, a flight attendant approached them, her expression stern and her posture rigid. Grace Dalton, a senior flight attendant with over 2 decades of experience, was known for her strict adherence to protocol. While her colleagues admired her ability to keep things in order, passengers sometimes found her blunt demeanor off-putting. "Excuse me, young lady," Grace said, her tone clipped. "We're preparing for takeoff. You need to put that book away." Startled, Chloe looked up, her eyes widening as she absorbed Grace's sharp tone. "Oh, I'm sorry," she stammered, fumbling to close the book. Before she could fully react, Grace reached out, plucked the book from Chloe's hands, and placed it in the overhead compartment with a practiced motion, as if used to handling disobedient children. Chloe's mouth fell open in shock, her cheeks turning red. She wasn't used to such abruptness, especially from adults in her father's company. Ethan, who had been adjusting his seatbelt, looked up just in time to catch the exchange. He saw the flicker of hurt cross Chloe's face and felt a pang of frustration. As much as he wanted to address it, he didn't reveal his identity as CEO, choosing instead to see how Grace handled the situation on her own. Taking a steadying breath, he met Grace's gaze calmly. "Ma'am, I think my daughter deserves an apology. She was following your instructions and didn't mean any harm." Grace's brows furrowed, her arms crossing tightly over her chest. "I'm just doing my job, sir," she said curtly, her voice icy. "Perhaps next time, you could teach her to be more attentive." Ethan's jaw tightened. He wanted to respond, to assert his authority, but he resisted, deciding instead to observe. Chloe, who had been watching him with a mix of admiration and gratitude, squeezed his hand, her silent way of reassuring him that she was okay. As the plane took off, Chloe sat quietly, her face still a little flushed from the encounter. She stared out the window, her excitement dimmed by Grace's words. Ethan noticed and felt a wave of disappointment, not just for Chloe's sake, but for his own. Skypath was supposed to be different. It was supposed to be a place where kindness and respect came first, not just another company where customers were treated as inconveniences. Halfway through the flight, he saw Chloe pull out a small notebook from her backpack, her face determined. She began writing, her pen moving in quick, steady strokes across the paper. "What are you writing, sweetheart?" Ethan asked gently. Chloe looked up, her expression serious but resolute. "I'm writing a letter to Skypath," she said softly, her voice steady despite the tremor of emotion in her eyes. "I want them to know how Grace's actions made me feel. Everyone should feel welcome here, right?" Ethan's heart swelled with pride. Chloe's response was thoughtful, graceful, and true to her character. She was speaking up not out of resentment, but out of a genuine desire to make a difference. "That's my girl," he whispered, squeezing her hand. "You have a powerful voice, and it's worth using." By the time they landed in New York, Chloe had completed her letter, pouring her feelings onto the page with a maturity that belied her age. She didn't just describe how Grace's behavior made her feel. She also emphasized the importance of kindness and respect, values she knew her father cherished and had worked so hard to build in a Skypath. Ethan read her words and felt a renewed sense of purpose. Chloe's experience had opened his eyes to a problem within his company, one he hadn't been fully aware of before. As they arrived at their hotel and settled in for their weekend in New York, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that the incident on the plane was more than just an isolated event. It was a sign, a reminder that he couldn't afford to let Skypath's values slip away as the company grew. He resolved to address these issues once they returned, determined to ensure that Skypath truly lived up to the ideals he had instilled in it. The streets of New York were alive with energy. Ethan and Chloe spent the day exploring Central Park, marveling at the towering skyscrapers, and taking in the sights of Times Square. They shared laughter, indulged in street food, and took countless photos, immersing themselves in the vibrant heart of the city. Yet, despite the day's adventures, Ethan couldn't completely shake the feeling that had settled over him since their flight. That small interaction between Chloe and Grace lingered in his mind. Skypath was his life's work, a business he had built with integrity and a mission to bring respect and kindness to every passenger. But Chloe's experience had highlighted something he couldn't ignore. There was a gap between his vision and the reality experienced by some passengers. That evening, after they returned to the hotel, Chloe unfolded the letter she had written. She'd addressed it to SkyPath's customer relations department, her words carefully chosen. Ethan read over her shoulder, watching her expression shift from determination to nervousness. "What if they don't listen, Dad?" she asked, her voice soft. Ethan put a comforting arm around her. "Your voice matters, Chloe. And sometimes it only takes one letter to start a bigger change." He hoped that his words rang true, not only for her, but for his company. Together, they took the letter to the hotel receptionist, who promised to mail it the next morning. Chloe handed it over with a look of quiet pride. As they headed back to their room, Ethan found himself feeling proud, too. Proud of Chloe's courage to speak up and of the values she was growing into. He resolved that this letter wouldn't be lost in a pile of paperwork. It would reach the right people, and he would ensure it himself. The next morning, Ethan woke before dawn, his mind buzzing with thoughts about SkyPath. He hadn't told Chloe yet, but he planned to make some important calls as soon as they returned home. He knew that if Chloe's experience was an indicator, then there might be deeper issues within SkyPath's culture. Issues that needed addressing before they grew too deeply rooted. When they returned to Atlanta a few days later, he went straight to his office and contacted Daniel Rivera, SkyPath's head of human resources. Daniel was a longtime friend and one of the few people who shared Ethan's vision for the company's future. "Morning, Daniel." Ethan began, his tone thoughtful. "I need to talk to you about something important." "Of course, Ethan. What's on your mind?" Daniel replied, picking up on the seriousness in Ethan's voice. Ethan recounted the encounter with Grace on the flight to New York, sparing no details. He described the look on Chloe's face, the letter she'd written, and how the experience had left them both feeling disillusioned. Throughout his story, Daniel listened attentively, letting Ethan express the frustration and disappointment that had been building inside him. "Ethan, that's disappointing, to say the least," Daniel said, his tone tinged with concern. SkyPath was built on the idea of respecting and caring for every passenger. If one of our senior employees acted that way, it could indicate a larger issue. Ethan nodded, the weight of Daniel's words sinking in. "Exactly. And I worry that in growing so quickly, we've lost touch with that core mission. If we allow this kind of behavior to continue, then we risk becoming just another airline." "Let's dig deeper," Daniel suggested. "I'll start by reviewing customer feedback from the past year. If we notice any patterns or recurring issues, we'll know it's not just an isolated incident." Ethan agreed, feeling a mix of relief and renewed purpose. Together, he and Daniel outlined a plan to investigate these concerns, focusing on how SkyPath could better train its staff to ensure that every passenger felt valued. The first step, they decided, was to create a compassion-based training program for SkyPath employees. Daniel suggested calling it the Kindness Connection. "The Kindness Connection," Ethan repeated, a smile crossing his face. "I like it. It sounds like exactly what we need right now." They agreed to hold a meeting with key staff members the following week to introduce the program. Ethan felt a renewed sense of purpose as they wrapped up the call, knowing that this could be the start of something transformative for SkyPath. The following week, Ethan gathered SkyPath's employees for a company-wide meeting. Employees from every department filled the auditorium, curious about the special announcement. There was a sense of excitement in the air, but also a hint of apprehension. Everyone sensed that changes were on the horizon. Ethan stood at the front of the room, looking over the audience. Many of the faces were familiar. He'd worked with these people since SkyPath's founding, and they had been with him through the ups and downs of building an airline from the ground up. He took a deep breath, reminding himself of why he was doing this, for his daughter, for SkyPath's passengers, and for the legacy he hoped to leave behind. "Thank you all for being here today," he began, his voice calm but resolute. "I want to talk about something that's very important to me, something that goes to the heart of what SkyPath stands for." He paused, glancing at Daniel, who gave him an encouraging nod. "A few days ago, my daughter Chloe and I flew with SkyPath on a trip to New York. It should have been an exciting adventure for us, a chance to experience the service we pride ourselves on. But something happened on that flight that gave me pause. One of our flight attendants, someone who's been with us for a long time, treated Chloe in a way that felt dismissive and unkind. It made me realize that, somewhere along the way, we might have lost touch with the values that built this company. Murmurs spread through the crowd as people exchanged glances. Some looked surprised, others uneasy. Ethan continued, his gaze steady. I don't bring this up to blame or shame anyone. I bring it up because I believe we can be better. We've grown fast, and with that growth comes a responsibility to ensure that every employee, from our new hires to our veterans, remembers what SkyPath is all about. Treating every passenger with respect, empathy, and care. Ethan paused, letting his words sink in. Starting today, we're implementing a new program called the Kindness Connection. This program will focus on empathy-based training, helping us all understand the impact of our actions on others. It's about bringing kindness into every interaction, every flight, every experience. Because if we can make each person feel valued, then we're doing more than just running an airline. We're creating a community. The room was silent, each person processing Ethan's message. Some nodded, visibly moved, while others seemed skeptical. Among them was Jane Collins, a senior flight attendant with a reputation for being efficient but no-nonsense. She was known for keeping order on her flights, and while she respected Ethan, she felt that focusing on empathy training might slow down operations. Ethan noticed Jane's expression and met her gaze, sensing her doubts. I know change isn't easy, he acknowledged, addressing the unspoken concerns in the room. But I believe that the Kindness Connection will bring us closer to the ideals we started with. This isn't just about the passengers. It's about all of us. It's about creating a culture where every one of us feels valued and supported. Jane shifted uncomfortably, exchanging glances with some of her colleagues. She respected Ethan, but couldn't help wondering if this emphasis on kindness would make their jobs more challenging in the high-paced airline environment. Still, she nodded politely, reserving judgment. As the meeting concluded, Ethan invited everyone to share their thoughts, promising to listen to their feedback and address any concerns. He knew this wasn't going to be an easy transition, but he was determined to see it through. That evening, as Ethan reflected on the day, he felt a mix of anticipation and uncertainty. He knew that changing the culture of an entire airline wouldn't happen overnight. But as he glanced at Chloe's letter, carefully tucked away in his briefcase, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. This was about more than a single flight or a single interaction. This was about making SkyPath a place where kindness truly took flight. The week following the announcement of the Kindness Connection, Ethan worked closely with Daniel Rivera to begin rolling out the empathy-based training program. Together, they developed workshops that aimed to help employees better understand how kindness and empathy could impact passenger experience. Role-playing exercises were designed to simulate challenging scenarios, with a focus on connecting with passengers beyond the basics of customer service. Ethan knew this was an ambitious program and that some employees might feel apprehensive. But he believed in the mission and hoped that sharing stories of positive passenger interactions would inspire everyone to embrace the change. The first workshop was scheduled for SkyPath's main terminal staff and select flight attendants, including Jane Collins and Grace Dalton. The room was buzzing with murmurs as employees gathered, most of them unsure of what to expect. Ethan took a deep breath and began the session by sharing a personal story about his experiences with kindness growing up. He explained that small gestures, a warm smile, a helping hand, could make a world of difference for someone feeling lost or overlooked. This isn't just a checklist of tasks, Ethan said, scanning the room. It's about recognizing that every passenger, every colleague, and every interaction matter. Our actions have the power to uplift someone's day. Let's make that our priority. Grace crossed her arms, her face expressionless, while Jane looked on, skeptical but respectful. As the first exercise began, Ethan noticed some employees engaging earnestly, while others remained reluctant. Ethan could tell that winning over everyone, especially seasoned staff like Grace and Jane, was going to take time. A few days after the first workshop, Jane sat in the break room with a few colleagues, discussing the Kindness Connection. She sipped her coffee, listening as her fellow flight attendants shared mixed opinions. Some felt encouraged by the emphasis on empathy, but others echoed Jane's concerns that the focus on kindness might make their jobs harder. "I respect Ethan's vision," Jane said cautiously, "but the reality is that we're already handling packed flights, delays, and anxious passengers. It's not easy to stop and be empathetic in every situation." Another flight attendant, Mark, nodded in agreement. "And let's face it, some passengers can be difficult. Are we supposed to hold their hands through every inconvenience?" As Jane listened to the complaints, she felt torn. She'd seen the importance of efficiency over the years, and she prided herself on her ability to maintain order. Still, she couldn't ignore the look in Ethan's eyes when he spoke about kindness. She knew he genuinely believed in it, even if she wasn't yet convinced it could work in a fast-paced environment. For now, she decided to keep an open mind, but she'd need to see results before she could fully commit. Just as the Kindness Connection program began to roll out across SkyPath, an unexpected incident threatened to derail everything. A passenger's video went viral, showing a SkyPath flight attendant, visibly annoyed, handling a frustrated passenger. The video showed a tense exchange over a seating issue, and the passenger's account of being treated dismissively quickly sparked an outpouring of negative reactions on social media. The public backlash hit SkyPath hard. Within hours, social media was flooded with comments criticizing the airline, accusing it of failing to deliver the compassionate service it claimed to stand for. News outlets picked up the story, and soon Ethan found himself facing a public relations storm. Naomi Lynn, SkyPath's PR director, called an emergency meeting with Ethan, Daniel, and other executives. Naomi, usually calm under pressure, looked uncharacteristically tense as she laid out the situation. "This has escalated quickly," Naomi said, her voice clipped. "The video has already been viewed over 1 million times, and people are questioning whether SkyPath's Kindness Connection is just a publicity stunt." Ethan felt a pang of frustration. This was the last thing he needed, especially with morale already mixed around the new program. He took a deep breath, reminding himself that every challenge was an opportunity to reinforce their mission. "Let's respond transparently," he said, his tone steady. "I'll release a statement explaining our commitment to improving SkyPath's culture, and I'll address the incident directly. I'll also reach out to the passenger personally and ensure they feel heard." Naomi nodded, relieved by his decisive response. "I think that's the right approach, Ethan. We just have to make sure the message is authentic, or it could backfire." As the meeting ended, Ethan felt the weight of the responsibility on his shoulders. He was determined to prove that SkyPath's commitment to kindness wasn't just a slogan. It was a genuine effort to build a better culture. But he also knew that regaining public trust would take time. The PR crisis sent ripples throughout SkyPath. Employees felt the added pressure, and tensions ran high. For Grace, the incident hit particularly close to home. She had spent her career adhering strictly to the rules, but now she was beginning to question whether her approach had made her seem as cold as the flight attendant in the viral video. During a Kindness Connection training session, Grace found herself paired with Jane Collins for a role-playing exercise. They were asked to reenact a scenario in which a passenger needed assistance but was visibly upset. The goal was to practice de-escalation while showing genuine concern. Grace started off stiffly, feeling uncomfortable, but as she acted out the scenario, something shifted within her. She remembered a similar situation from her own life. Just a few months ago, she had flown to visit her family after her divorce. The trip had been difficult, and she'd felt alone and vulnerable. A flight attendant had kindly checked on her, bringing her a glass of water and sitting with her for a moment. That small gesture had meant the world to her. Grace's demeanor softened as she continued the exercise with Jane, and for the first time, she began to see her role differently. Maybe Ethan's vision wasn't just idealism. Maybe there was something meaningful in connecting with passengers on a human level, just as that flight attendant had done for her. After the exercise, Jane noticed the change in Grace's expression. "You okay?" she asked, surprised by the vulnerability in Grace's eyes. Grace nodded, taking a shaky breath. "I think I get it now. It's not just about the job. It's about people." For the first time, Grace felt a glimmer of understanding. She realized that kindness wasn't a weakness. It was a strength she'd overlooked. The PR crisis and the employees' reactions weighed heavily on Ethan's mind. He'd hoped the kindness connection would inspire his team, but it was clear that more work was needed to truly embed these values into SkyPath's culture. One afternoon, as Ethan was reviewing the training materials, Chloe knocked on his office door. She walked in, holding a notebook filled with ideas she had been jotting down since their trip to New York. Seeing her father's determination reminded her of the letters she'd written and the values they both cared about. "I've been thinking, Dad," she said, sitting across from him. "Maybe it would help if everyone had something to remind them of what SkyPath stands for, something simple like a kindness pledge that employees could sign." Ethan looked at her thoughtfully. "A kindness pledges? Yeah, it could be something everyone agrees to, like a promise to treat each passenger and each other with respect and compassion. Maybe if people sign it, they'll feel more committed to it." Ethan smiled, amazed by her insight. "That's a wonderful idea, Chloe. A kindness pledge might just be what we need to help everyone feel connected to the mission." Inspired, Ethan drafted the SkyPath Kindness Charter that evening, a short but powerful document that outlined the core values of empathy, respect, and kindness. He decided that every employee, from senior management to new hires, would be invited to sign the charter, symbolizing their commitment to building a supportive, compassionate culture at SkyPath. The next morning, Ethan sent out an email inviting employees to join him in signing the Kindness Charter. The response was overwhelming. Employees from all departments showed up, ready to pledge their dedication to SkyPath's mission. Even Jane and Grace, after some hesitation, signed their names, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. As Ethan looked over the signed charter, he felt a surge of hope. Despite the setbacks and the resistance, he knew that the journey to transform SkyPath had truly begun. And with each name added to the charter, he felt closer to creating the company he'd always envisioned, a place where kindness took flight. The launch of the Kindness Charter stirred up SkyPath's employees, and the reactions were mixed. While some employees signed eagerly, embracing the message of compassion and respect, others, particularly long-term staff like Jane Collins, found it difficult to buy into what they saw as an unnecessary layer of responsibility in an already demanding job. In the break room, Jane found herself once again surrounded by colleagues discussing the recent changes. One of them, Tina, a newer flight attendant, held up a copy of the Kindness Charter with a soft smile. "I think this could really change things," Tina said, looking around. "Imagine if every passenger felt cared for like family. Wouldn't that be amazing?" Jane sighed, giving a slight shake of her head. "I get the sentiment, Tina, but it's not that easy. When you're in the air, and every passenger has a different problem or demand, keeping up with kindness training feels impractical." Grace, who had been quiet in the corner, looked up thoughtfully. She'd started to see the value in Ethan's mission after her recent realization, but she also understood Jane's perspective. "Maybe it's not about doing it perfectly every time," she suggested. "Maybe it's just about trying to connect where we can. That's what I'm starting to think, at least." The room fell silent as everyone considered Grace's words. Jane nodded, a faint look of curiosity in her eyes. Grace's sincerity softened her stance, and Jane decided to give the kindness connection a bit more consideration. As the weeks passed, Ethan began receiving reports from employees who had embraced the new approach. In one instance, a young flight attendant named Luis had gone out of his way to calm a nervous flyer on a long-haul flight to Seattle. The passenger, a mother traveling with a baby for the first time, wrote a heartfelt letter to SkyPath, sharing how Luis had helped her with her bags, brought her water during the flight, and even entertained her baby when she needed a break. Reading the letter, Ethan felt a swell of pride. The kindness connection was having an impact, even if progress was slower than he had hoped. He forwarded the letter to his executive team, including Daniel, who responded with a note of encouragement. They agreed that stories like these were the true markers of success, not only for SkyPath's reputation, but for the airline's internal morale. Ethan decided to feature stories of kindness like Luis's in the company newsletter, hoping they would inspire other employees. These stories became a source of motivation, slowly shifting the company's atmosphere toward one of compassion and care. Meanwhile, Chloe's experience with SkyPath and the Kindness Charter had sparked conversations outside the airline as well. Her teacher, Ms. Ramos, had heard about the letter Chloe wrote and invited her to share her story with her classmates as part of a lesson on kindness and responsibility. On the day of her presentation, Chloe stood at the front of the classroom, a mix of excitement and nerves swirling within her. She spoke about her experience with Grace, how it made her feel, and how it inspired her to write a letter to her father's airline. As she shared the story, her classmates listened intently, captivated by her courage and the positive changes she was helping to bring about. "I learned that even small actions can have a big impact," Chloe said, glancing around the room. "Sometimes, people just need a reminder that they're seen and valued. That's what my dad's airline is trying to do now, show everyone, no matter who they are, that they matter." Her words resonated with her classmates. After she finished, a shy boy named Eric raised his hand. "Do you think it's hard to be kind all the time?" he asked, his voice soft. Chloe smiled thoughtfully. "Yeah, it can be, but I think it's about trying our best and forgiving ourselves when we don't get it right. Even if we mess up, we can still keep trying to make things better." The discussion left an impression on the students, sparking a series of kindness-related projects within the class. Chloe's story became an example of how one voice, even a young one, could inspire change, both in and outside of her father's company. Back at SkyPath, Ethan received an email from Daniel, who had reviewed recent customer feedback and noticed a growing number of positive reviews mentioning the Kindness Connection. Passengers praised the attentiveness of the flight attendants and the small, thoughtful gestures that made their journeys more enjoyable. Ethan felt a renewed sense of optimism, knowing the culture he envisioned was slowly taking root. In the next Kindness Connection workshop, Ethan personally attended to gauge the progress. Employees like Jane and Grace were present, and he decided to share Chloe's classroom story, hoping it would serve as a reminder of the purpose behind the initiative. Chloe told her classmates that kindness isn't about being perfect, Ethan said, his voice calm yet resonant. "It's about trying, about putting in the effort to make a difference in someone's day. We're all going to have tough moments, but I believe that even in those moments, we can choose to lead with compassion." Jane listened, her skepticism slowly giving way to reflection. She thought of her years as a flight attendant and the passengers who had left lasting impressions on her. Over time, she'd become so focused on efficiency that she'd forgotten the personal connections that once brought her joy. Hearing Ethan speak, she felt a spark reignite within her, a desire to bring back that part of her work she'd left behind. At the end of the session, Jane approached Ethan. "I appreciate what you're trying to do, Ethan," she said, her tone softer than usual. "I can see now that this isn't just about passengers. It's about us too." Ethan smiled, sensing her sincerity. "Thank you, Jane. That means a lot. It's not an easy change, but I believe in us. I believe in SkyPath." Just as SkyPath's morale seemed to be rising, another challenge surfaced. An unexpected weather delay forced a long layover for passengers on a flight from Los Angeles to Denver, leading to frustration and mounting complaints. SkyPath's customer service team scrambled to handle the situation, and Ethan found himself facing a potential backlash from passengers expecting a seamless experience. Determined to prevent another PR crisis, Ethan rallied his team. He called an emergency meeting, emphasizing the importance of handling the situation with empathy. He encouraged the customer service representatives and flight attendants to keep passengers updated, to acknowledge their frustration, and to provide small gestures of care, like complimentary snacks and updates on rescheduling options. "Let's show them that SkyPath doesn't just talk about kindness. We live it, especially when things don't go as planned," Ethan said, his voice steady but determined. Grace, now fully committed to the Kindness Connection, volunteered to assist the ground crew at the gate. She spoke with the passengers, offering sincere apologies and listening to their concerns. Her newfound empathy softened her interactions, and passengers responded positively, expressing appreciation for her attentiveness. One passenger, a mother traveling with her young children, approached Grace with a tired but grateful smile. "I know delays happen, but the way you handled it made all the difference," she said, giving Grace a nod of gratitude. By the end of the night, Ethan received a message from one of the customer service agents praising Grace's efforts, and he knew that her transformation was genuine. In many ways, it was the living embodiment of what he hoped the kindness connection could achieve. She was a reminder that, even in challenging moments, kindness could prevail. As Ethan drove home that evening, he reflected on how far SkyPath had come. It hadn't been easy, and there were still hurdles to face. But seeing Grace's dedication and the impact of the kindness connection reassured him that they were on the right path. The recent weather delay and Grace's response had shown him the power of small acts, of genuine connections that could turn even the most stressful situations into opportunities for compassion. And though the journey was far from over, Ethan felt ready to face whatever lay ahead, determined to make SkyPath a place where kindness truly took flight. With the kindness connection slowly gaining traction, SkyPath began receiving more positive feedback from passengers. Stories of flight attendants going above and beyond became regular features in the company newsletter. However, even as some employees were inspired, others questioned whether the focus on empathy was sustainable. This sentiment was echoed by a few members of SkyPath's board, who voiced concerns about the company's performance. They noted that while customer satisfaction was important, there was also a need to prioritize efficiency, especially as the airline expanded. At the quarterly board meeting, Tom Wallace, a senior board member known for his no-nonsense approach, raised a critical question. Ethan, the kindness connection is a nice concept, but we have a business to run. Our recent delays and extra service accommodations have cost us. We need to find a balance. Ethan felt the weight of the words, knowing Tom's opinion held sway among other board members. But he was determined not to compromise on SkyPath's mission. Tom, I understand your concerns, Ethan replied steadily. But I believe that creating a culture of empathy will bring long-term value. Our reputation is worth more than short-term savings, and our customers will remember the care we give them. The board remained divided. Ethan left the meeting feeling the pressure mounting. He knew he would have to prove that kindness was more than just a marketing tool. It was the heart of SkyPath's future. After the tense board meeting, Ethan returned home exhausted, feeling the weight of expectations pressing down on him. That evening, as he sat at the kitchen table, Chloe noticed his unusually quiet demeanor. "Dad, are you okay?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. Ethan managed a small smile. "Just a tough day at work, sweetheart." Chloe pulled out a chair and sat across from him, her eyes wise beyond her years. "Is it about SkyPath?" Ethan nodded, unsure how much to share. "Some people think I'm focusing too much on kindness, that maybe I'm being idealistic." Chloe frowned, thinking back to the flight to New York and the letter she had written. "Dad, if there's one thing I've learned from all this, it's that kindness is never a bad idea. You're not just running an airline. You're showing people that their experience matters." Ethan felt a wave of gratitude. Chloe's words reminded him why he'd started the kindness connection in the first place. He knew the journey would be difficult, but seeing her confidence in him renewed his commitment. "Thank you, Chloe," he said, squeezing her hand. "You always know how to remind me what's important." With her encouragement, Ethan resolved to move forward, even if it meant facing resistance. He couldn't let doubt overshadow his vision. SkyPath's success would be measured not only in profits, but in the lives they touched. Ethan decided to sit in on several SkyPath flights, observing employees firsthand as they implemented the kindness connection. His first flight was a busy cross-country route from Atlanta to Los Angeles, and he opted to fly anonymously, watching his staff interact with passengers. During the flight, he noticed moments of genuine compassion, attendants helping passengers with young children, offering smiles and small reassurances. But he also saw areas for improvement. Some attendants were still hesitant, caught between protocol and kindness, afraid that slowing down to show care might hinder efficiency. After the flight, Ethan asked the attendants to gather for a brief chat in the break room. He kept the conversation open, encouraging them to share their thoughts on the kindness connection. One of the attendants, Maya, expressed her struggles. "I get it, Mr. Harper. I really do. But sometimes it feels like we're juggling so much already. It's hard to add one more thing." Ethan nodded, understanding her perspective. "I hear you, Maya, and I appreciate your honesty. But remember, kindness doesn't have to be a huge gesture. Even a smile or a few words can make someone feel valued. That's what the kindness connection is about, those small moments. Maya nodded slowly, her expression thoughtful. Ethan left the break room with a renewed commitment to support his team, realizing that real change would take time and understanding from both sides. Shortly after Ethan's flight observations, a story emerged that would become a turning point for SkyPath and the kindness connection. A young woman named Rachel, who had been traveling on one of SkyPath's busiest routes, shared an emotional story on social media. Rachel was en route to her mother's hospital bedside when her flight was delayed due to severe weather. She had been anxiously watching the clock, fearing she wouldn't make it in time. A SkyPath flight attendant, seeing her distress, sat with her, offering comfort and even helping her reschedule her connecting flight. When Rachel finally arrived, she was able to say goodbye to her mother, a moment she credited to the flight attendant's compassion. Her post went viral, with thousands of comments praising SkyPath for showing such genuine care. News outlets picked up the story, and soon Ethan's inbox was flooded with messages of gratitude and encouragement. Ethan felt a surge of pride, knowing this was the impact he'd hoped for. He shared Rachel's story with the board, the employees, and his family, reminding everyone that kindness had tangible, life-changing effects. For Grace, Jane, and the rest of the SkyPath team, Rachel's story became a symbol of what they could achieve. It reaffirmed their commitment to the kindness connection, proving that even in difficult moments, compassion could shine through. Inspired by Rachel's story, Ethan called a company-wide meeting to celebrate the growing success of the kindness connection. Employees gathered in the auditorium, filling the seats with a sense of anticipation. Ethan stood at the podium, his gaze warm as he looked over the faces of his team. "Today, I want to thank each of you," he began, his voice steady. "The kindness connection isn't just a program. It's a commitment, a promise to show our passengers that they matter. And every time one of you chooses kindness, you're helping us fulfill that promise." As he spoke, Ethan noticed Jane and Grace sitting in the front row, their expressions softened with pride and understanding. The two of them had come a long way, and seeing their support gave Ethan confidence that his vision was finally taking root. "To celebrate our progress, I'd like to introduce a new initiative," he announced. "Starting next month, SkyPath will host an annual Day of Kindness, where our team will volunteer in the community, bringing the values of empathy and compassion beyond our airline and into the world." Applause erupted throughout the room as employees embraced the idea. Ethan's vision for SkyPath was expanding, becoming more than just an airline initiative. It was growing into a movement, one that reached beyond flights and terminals. After the meeting, Grace approached Ethan, a smile on her face. "Thank you for not giving up on this, Ethan. I was skeptical at first, but now I see how much it means, not just to our passengers, but to us." Ethan felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that the kindness connection had resonated with Grace and others. This unity and commitment were exactly what he'd hoped to inspire. Together, they were transforming SkyPath into a beacon of kindness and respect, one act of compassion at a time. Following the success of Rachel's story and the announcement of SkyPath's Day of Kindness, Ethan felt hopeful that the kindness connection was finally becoming ingrained in the airline's culture. But the road was still rough, and resistance among certain employees continued to bubble under the surface. One day, after a particularly challenging flight, during which several delays led to passenger frustrations, Jane Collins found herself exhausted and questioning whether the focus on kindness could truly be sustained in high-pressure situations. Despite her recent progress, she felt that the constant push for empathy added an extra layer of stress. As she vented to her friend Mark in the break room, she admitted, "It's hard to care for everyone when we're running behind, and passengers are upset. I know Ethan wants us to be compassionate, but I'm not sure how practical it is." Mark nodded sympathetically. "Sometimes I feel the same way. It's a lot to juggle. But maybe this isn't about being perfect. Maybe it's just about trying when we can." Jane mulled over his words, reflecting on her own journey since the kindness connection began. She knew she had grown, but old habits were hard to break. Deep down, She hoped that the dedication Ethan was showing would continue to inspire her and others in difficult moments. While Ethan was dealing with employee morale, Chloe continued to think about ways to help her father's mission succeed. She spent evenings sketching ideas and writing down thoughts in her notebook, hoping to contribute in some small way to the airline's culture shift. One evening, after dinner, Chloe approached her dad with her latest idea. "Dad, what if we made something like a kindness passport for passengers? It could be a small booklet with stories from around the world about kindness, like how people show it in different cultures." Ethan looked at her with admiration. "A kindness passport? I like that. We could include stories and even add spaces where passengers could write down their own experiences. It would be a reminder that kindness is something that crosses borders." Chloe's eyes lit up. "Exactly. It could make people feel like they're part of something bigger, part of the SkyPath family." Ethan felt a surge of pride in Chloe's creativity and empathy. He knew that bringing her idea to life could reinforce the kindness connection's impact, extending it to passengers in a tangible, memorable way. They agreed to start developing the kindness passport as part of SkyPath's in-flight offerings, giving passengers a chance to connect with the mission on a personal level. After struggling with the pressures of the kindness connection, Jane reached a breaking point on a long-haul flight from Atlanta to San Francisco. The cabin was crowded, and the flight was delayed due to technical issues. Passengers were restless, and some expressed their frustration openly. Jane found herself struggling to maintain her composure as she tried to calm an elderly couple who were anxious about missing their connecting flight. In that moment, Jane noticed Louise, a young flight attendant, calmly helping a mother with 2 children, one of whom was crying. She watched as Louise knelt down to the child's level, offering a kind smile and distracting the little one with crayons and paper. The mother's relief was visible, and Jane felt a wave of warmth watching Louise handle the situation with genuine empathy. Seeing Louise in action reminded Jane of why she had become a flight attendant in the first place: to connect with people, to be there for them in difficult moments. For years, she'd let that purpose slip away, focusing solely on efficiency and procedure. But now, the kindness connection was showing her that those connections still mattered. After the flight, Jane pulled Louise aside. "I just wanted to say thank you. Watching you with that family reminded me what we're here for. It's easy to forget, but you helped me remember." Louise smiled, a bit surprised by her sincerity. "We're all learning together, Jane. I think we just have to keep trying, one passenger at a time." Jane nodded, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. The kindness connection wasn't just a program. It was a journey, one that was helping her rediscover the heart of her work. A few days later, Ethan decided to hold a gathering for SkyPath's employees, wanting to share the progress and challenges of the kindness connection in an honest and open way. Employees from all departments filled the auditorium, eager to hear his thoughts. Ethan stepped up to the podium, his gaze steady as he scanned the room. He took a deep breath, reminding himself of the journey they'd been on and the work that still lay ahead. "I want to thank each of you for the dedication and patience you've shown as we've implemented the kindness connection," he began, his voice filled with sincerity. "I know it hasn't been easy, and I know some of you have doubts, but I believe that every one of you has the power to make a difference, even in the smallest ways." He paused, allowing his words to resonate with the crowd. "This isn't just about our passengers. It's about all of us. When we create a culture of kindness, we're not only helping our customers, we're building a community. And as Chloe reminded me recently, kindness crosses all boundaries. It's a universal language, one that we can choose to speak every day." The employees listened intently, and as Ethan spoke, he felt a renewed energy in the room. He could see that his words had touched many of them, sparking the hope he'd worked so hard to cultivate. After the speech, he announced the official launch of the Kindness Passport, a concept inspired by Chloe, which would be available on select flights as a way for passengers to document their own acts of kindness. The idea was met with enthusiastic applause, and Ethan felt the collective spirit of SkyPath growing stronger. As he left the stage, Ethan saw Jane and Grace standing together, smiling. He felt a surge of pride, knowing that they, and so many others, were finally embracing the mission that had become his life's work. The next month, SkyPath held its first day of kindness, an initiative Ethan had introduced as a way for employees to volunteer in their communities. The event included a wide range of activities. Employees read to children in hospitals, helped at food banks, and visited nursing homes to connect with residents. Chloe joined a group at a local children's hospital, spending the day reading stories and doing crafts with the kids. As she sat with a little girl named Emma, who was shyly clutching a crayon, Chloe realized the importance of these small moments. For Emma, the presence of someone who cared and listened meant everything. Nearby, Ethan volunteered alongside his team at a food bank, packing boxes and handing out meals. He spoke with several people from the community, hearing their stories and sharing laughter over small moments of joy. For him, the Day of Kindness was more than just a corporate event. It was a reminder of why he'd started the Kindness Connection in the first place. As the day came to an end, employees shared stories of their experiences, filling the room with warmth and inspiration. Some spoke of connections they'd made with the people they'd served, while others reflected on the personal growth they felt from giving back. Jane and Grace, who had helped at a nursing home, shared how a resident had thanked them for their visit, saying it made her feel less alone. Ethan took in these stories, a deep sense of satisfaction settling over him. SkyPath's Day of Kindness had shown everyone the power of empathy and connection, reinforcing the values he'd worked so hard to instill. That evening, as he and Chloe walked home together, Ethan looked over at his daughter, gratitude filling his heart. "Chloe, you've been my inspiration through all of this. Thank you for believing in me, even when things got tough." Chloe smiled, squeezing his hand. "Thank you, Dad. You showed me that kindness is more than words. It's something you do. And I'm really proud of you." They walked in comfortable silence, knowing that SkyPath's journey was far from over. The Kindness Connection was just beginning, and together, they would continue to make SkyPath a place where every passenger, employee, and community member felt valued and seen. The success of SkyPath's first day of kindness rippled beyond the airline itself, drawing attention from within the industry. SkyPath employees shared their experiences on social media, where passengers and community members praised the initiative. The positive response was uplifting, and it felt like a turning point for the Kindness Connection. One morning, Ethan's assistant walked into his office, a look of excitement on her face. "Ethan, you're not going to believe this," she said, handing him an email. "You've been nominated for the Excellence in Leadership Award by the National Airline Association. They want to recognize your efforts with the Kindness Connection." Ethan's eyes widened as he scanned the email, feeling a mix of pride and disbelief. The nomination was an acknowledgement not just of his leadership, but of the impact SkyPath was making in the world of aviation. As he read the message, his thoughts turned to Chloe. She had been the spark that ignited this journey, and he knew that he owed much of SkyPath's transformation to her courage and belief in kindness. He decided he would take Chloe to the award ceremony, knowing she deserved to be there as much as he did. With the upcoming award ceremony, Chloe felt more invested in SkyPath than ever. Inspired by the company's growth, she started helping her dad brainstorm new ways to spread the Kindness Connection. One evening, while they were discussing ideas, Chloe suggested something close to her heart. "Dad, what if we create a program specifically for younger passengers? Something like a junior kindness crew?" she proposed, her eyes shining with excitement. Kids could learn about kindness and even get little certificates for acts of compassion they show on flights. Ethan considered her idea, his admiration for Chloe's empathy growing. "That's a wonderful idea, Chloe. Imagine how many kids we could inspire to be kinder, just by showing them that even small actions can make a difference." The next day, Chloe presented her idea to a small group of SkyPath employees, who enthusiastically agreed to help bring the Junior Kindness Crew to life. The program launched quietly on select routes, and within a few weeks, stories of young passengers assisting others, helping elderly passengers with bags, sharing toys with younger children began to emerge. Chloe's Junior Kindness Crew initiative became a heartwarming addition to SkyPath's mission, reinforcing Ethan's belief that compassion could be cultivated at any age. Together, they were building a culture that celebrated empathy as a core value, both in the air and on the ground. The evening of the Excellence in Leadership Awards ceremony was filled with anticipation. Ethan arrived at the venue with Chloe by his side, feeling a mixture of excitement and gratitude. They took their seats among industry leaders, executives, and peers, many of whom had heard of SkyPath's Kindness Connection initiative. When it was finally time for the award announcement, Ethan held Chloe's hand, feeling her steady presence as the announcer introduced him. Tonight, we recognize an industry leader who has redefined customer service in aviation, the announcer began. Through his Kindness Connection initiative, Ethan Harper has shown that compassion is not only possible, but essential in a fast-paced industry. His commitment to empathy is transforming the passenger experience and inspiring others across the field. As Ethan's name was called, he stood up, his heart pounding as he made his way to the stage. He took a deep breath, glancing at Chloe before addressing the audience. "This award belongs to the entire SkyPath team," he began, his voice steady. "The Kindness Connection isn't just my vision. It's something that each of my employees has embraced, bringing it to life in ways I never could have imagined." He looked over the crowd, feeling a surge of pride. "And this journey began because of someone very special, my daughter, Chloe. Her courage and kindness inspired me to see SkyPath as more than just an airline, as a family. Thank you, Chloe, for reminding me of what matters most." The audience applauded, and Ethan saw Chloe beaming in her seat, her pride evident. In that moment, he felt that SkyPath had achieved something far greater than he'd ever dreamed, thanks to Chloe's belief in the power of kindness. After the awards ceremony, SkyPath employees felt a renewed commitment to the Kindness Connection. Grace, who had been one of the initiative's early skeptics, found herself unexpectedly moved by Ethan's speech. She realized just how much her outlook had changed since the initiative began. One evening, she sat down with a few newer flight attendants, sharing her story. "Honestly, I wasn't sure about the Kindness Connection at first," she admitted, her tone reflective. "I thought it would slow us down or make things too complicated. But then something shifted. I saw passengers not just as faces in a crowd, but as people with their own lives, fears, and hopes." The younger attendants listened intently, surprised by Grace's candor. She shared stories of moments when she connected with passengers, moments that had reminded her why she loved being a flight attendant. "Kindness isn't about perfection," Grace said, smiling softly. "It's about trying. And each time we make that effort, we create something meaningful for ourselves and the people we serve." Her words resonated with her colleagues, many of whom began looking up to her as a mentor. Grace's journey from skepticism to belief became an inspiration within SkyPath, showing that even the most reluctant could find value in compassion. As the Kindness Connection continued to grow, Ethan began receiving letters and messages from passengers, employees, and even people outside the airline industry. SkyPath's story had touched the lives of many, inspiring other companies to consider similar initiatives focused on empathy and connection. One message in particular stood out to Ethan. It was from a teacher in Texas who had started a classroom project based on Chloe's Junior Kindness Crew. Her students documented acts of kindness throughout the school year, creating a kindness tree filled with notes about their good deeds. Reading this, Ethan felt a profound sense of fulfillment. The Kindness Connection was no longer just a program at SkyPath. It had become a movement. Its impact was spreading beyond the airline, creating ripples of compassion in unexpected places. Feeling inspired, Ethan shared the teacher's story with his employees, encouraging them to keep believing in the mission. As he stood before his team, he realized that SkyPath had grown into something much greater than he'd imagined. It wasn't just an airline. It was a family of people who believed in the power of small, meaningful actions. When Ethan returned home that evening, Chloe greeted him with a warm smile. "I heard about the teacher's letter," she said. "It's amazing how one letter can make such a big difference." Ethan nodded, feeling a deep sense of pride. "It is, Chloe, and it's a reminder that the journey isn't over. There's always more kindness to share." They sat together, reflecting on how far they'd come and the work still ahead. In that quiet moment, Ethan felt ready to continue building a future filled with compassion, one kind act at a time. As the Kindness Connection continued to evolve, Ethan decided it was time to formally recognize employees who had gone above and beyond to embody compassion and empathy. Thus, the Circle of Kindness Awards were created, an annual ceremony celebrating SkyPath team members whose actions had left a lasting impact on passengers and fellow employees. The first ceremony was held at SkyPath's headquarters, where employees from every department gathered to celebrate their colleagues. Ethan stood at the podium, scanning the room filled with people who had become family to him over the years. This award, he began, isn't just about recognizing acts of kindness. It's about honoring the people who make SkyPath a place where everyone feels valued and respected. Today, we celebrate those who have shown us that even the smallest actions can make the biggest difference. One of the recipients was Luis, the young flight attendant who had comforted a stressed mother and her baby. As he accepted his award, Luis shared a few words about how the Kindness Connection had inspired him to see his role differently, not just as a job, but as a chance to touch people's lives. By the end of the ceremony, the room was filled with warmth and inspiration. Ethan looked over the crowd, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. The Circle of Kindness Awards had not only recognized individual achievements, but had also reinforced the core values that held SkyPath together. A few days after the award ceremony, Ethan received an unexpected message from Hannah, a former SkyPath employee who had moved overseas. In her message, she shared how her experience with the Kindness Connection had influenced her work in her new role, inspiring her to implement similar empathy-focused programs. Hannah's letter described her new position as the director of a nonprofit organization, where she worked with vulnerable communities. She explained that her time at SkyPath had shown her the power of kindness in action, a lesson she now carried into her work every day. "Your dedication to kindness changed the way I see people," she wrote. "And now, I'm using those lessons to help others feel seen and supported. Thank you for building something that reaches far beyond the skies." Reading her words, Ethan felt humbled and grateful. SkyPath's impact had stretched beyond the airline industry, creating a network of people committed to compassion and empathy. Hannah's story reminded him that the legacy of the Kindness Connection was expanding in ways he'd never anticipated. One weekend, Chloe accompanied her father on a flight from Atlanta to Chicago, eager to observe the Kindness Connection in action. Chloe, who had been deeply involved in the initiative's development, wanted to experience firsthand how SkyPath's values played out on a typical flight. The flight began smoothly, with passengers boarding and settling in. Chloe sat near the front, quietly observing the interactions between the crew and passengers. But shortly after takeoff, an elderly passenger a few rows behind her started to feel unwell. He appeared pale, clutching his chest as he struggled to breathe. Chloe's heart pounded as she watched Grace and Luis rush to assist the man. The two flight attendants worked together seamlessly, bringing the passenger oxygen and keeping him calm. Chloe noticed the gentle way Grace spoke to the man, reassuring him with a steady hand on his shoulder, while Luis knelt beside him, offering water and checking his pulse. As the flight prepared for an emergency landing, Chloe's anxiety turned to admiration. She realized that what she was witnessing was exactly what her father had hoped to inspire: acts of kindness rooted in compassion, even in moments of crisis. The experience gave Chloe a new understanding of the demands SkyPath employees faced and the resilience it took to lead with empathy under pressure. After the flight, Chloe expressed her appreciation to Grace and Luis. "I know my dad's worked hard to create the Kindness Connection, but seeing you both in action showed me what it really means. Thank you for everything you do." Grace smiled, her eyes softened with gratitude. "Thank you, Chloe. And please tell your dad that his vision has touched more lives than he could ever know." Following the success of the Circle of Kindness Awards and stories like Hannah's, Ethan decided to expand SkyPath's commitment to empathy beyond the airline industry. Inspired by the impact of the Day of Kindness, he launched SkyPath community hubs in select cities, starting with Atlanta, Chicago, and New York. The community hubs offered resources for underserved communities, including job training, language classes, and mental health support. Each hub was staffed by SkyPath employees who volunteered their time, sharing their skills and stories with members of the community. The initiative aimed to extend the values of the kindness connection beyond the airline's walls, creating tangible support for those in need. At the launch event for the Atlanta hub, Ethan invited Chloe to speak. She took the stage with quiet confidence, sharing her perspective on kindness and its power to bridge divides. Kindness isn't just a feeling, it's an action, Chloe said, her voice filled with conviction. It's something we choose to share, even with strangers. SkyPath's community hubs are here to remind people that they matter, no matter who they are or where they're from. The audience applauded, moved by Chloe's words. Ethan felt a surge of pride, knowing that his daughter was already embodying the values he'd worked so hard to instill. The community hubs represented a new chapter for SkyPath, one that would allow the company's mission of kindness to reach people far beyond its flights. As the kindness connection continued to grow, Ethan began thinking about SkyPath's future and the legacy he wanted to leave behind. Chloe's involvement in the Junior Kindness crew and her speech at the community hub launch had shown him that she was ready to carry the torch. One evening, as they sat on the porch, Ethan shared his thoughts with Chloe. SkyPath has come so far because of you, Chloe. Your letter, your ideas, they've shaped everything we've done, he said, his voice filled with pride. I hope that one day, you'll continue this mission and lead SkyPath with the same heart and courage you've shown me. Chloe looked at him, her eyes bright with determination. I'd love that, Dad. I want to keep making a difference, just like you have. Ethan felt a profound sense of peace, knowing that SkyPath's future was in capable hands. Together, they had built something far greater than an airline, a family, a movement, a legacy of kindness that would endure for generations. As they sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Ethan felt ready to pass on the mission he had started. The kindness connection had become more than a program. It was a way of life, one that Chloe would carry forward with grace and compassion. After the success of the community hubs and the growing recognition of SkyPath's initiatives, Ethan began preparing Chloe for a more formal role within the company. He knew that her compassion and insight would bring a new energy to SkyPath's mission, and he wanted her to feel fully empowered to carry their legacy forward. One evening, as they sat together reviewing notes for the Junior Kindness Crew program, Ethan took Chloe's hand. Chloe, I want you to know that SkyPath is yours as much as it is mine, he said, his voice filled with warmth. You've been the heart of everything we've done here. I'd like you to take on a formal role, maybe even as the head of the Kindness Connection initiative. You've already shown everyone the power of your vision. Chloe's eyes widened with surprise, then settled into a look of quiet determination. I'd love that, Dad. I want to keep making a difference. Keep building what we started. They embraced, each feeling a renewed sense of purpose. For Ethan, it was a moment of pride and peace. For Chloe, it was the beginning of her journey, a chance to honor her father's work while creating her own legacy within SkyPath. A few weeks after officially stepping into her new role, Chloe called her first meeting with the team dedicated to the Kindness Connection. She had spent days carefully outlining her vision, adding her own ideas to expand the program. Her enthusiasm was evident as she greeted each team member, her warm smile and steady confidence putting everyone at ease. Chloe began by introducing a new concept. Kindness kits, small care packages with essentials like blankets, snacks, and personal hygiene items. These kits would be stored on flights and given to passengers facing unexpected hardships or delays. Her goal was to make passengers feel cared for, even in challenging moments. Sometimes, kindness is as simple as giving someone comfort during a difficult time, Chloe explained. I want every passenger to feel that SkyPath is more than an airline, that it's a place where they're seen and valued. The team responded with enthusiasm, each member excited to support Chloe's ideas. By the end of the meeting, Chloe felt a deep sense of accomplishment. She was carrying her father's vision forward, adding her own touch to SkyPath's legacy of empathy and compassion. Ethan knew it was time to start stepping back, allowing Chloe to take on more leadership as she guided the Kindness Connection into its next phase. The board arranged a farewell ceremony to honor his years of service, and Ethan prepared a speech that would reflect the journey SkyPath had taken. As he stood before the employees, many of whom had been with him since the company's early days, Ethan felt a wave of nostalgia and gratitude. When I started SkyPath, I dreamed of creating an airline that would treat every passenger with respect and dignity, he began, his voice filled with emotion. But it's you, each of you, who turned that dream into reality. Together, we've created something much greater than I ever imagined. A family united by compassion. He paused, glancing at Chloe in the front row, her face beaming with pride. And as I take a step back, I'm honored to pass this mission on to someone who has been my greatest inspiration, my daughter Chloe. I know that with her guidance, SkyPath will continue to soar, touching lives in ways we can't yet imagine. The room erupted in applause, and Ethan felt a profound sense of peace. He knew that SkyPath's future was in good hands, and as he looked out at the sea of faces, he felt the strength of the community they had built together. Chloe's first official act as head of the Kindness Connection was to launch the Kindness Kits on all SkyPath flights. Her idea was met with excitement from employees and passengers alike, and stories began pouring in about how the kits had brought comfort to people in need. One story in particular touched Chloe deeply. A mother traveling alone with her toddler had been struggling with a canceled flight, exhausted and unsure of what to do next. A flight attendant had given her a kindness kit, which included a warm blanket, snacks for her child, and a handwritten note of encouragement. The mother later wrote to SkyPath, sharing how much the small gesture had meant to her. As Chloe read the letter, she felt a sense of fulfillment she hadn't experienced before. She was beginning to understand the true impact of her role, realizing that even the smallest actions could leave a lasting mark. Her work was no longer just a continuation of her father's vision. It was becoming her own. That evening, she sat down with Ethan, sharing the letter and her thoughts. "I see now why this work matters so much, Dad," she said. "It's about creating moments of connection that stay with people. I feel like I'm finally beginning to understand everything you taught me." Ethan smiled, feeling a surge of pride. "You're doing amazing work, Chloe. SkyPath is lucky to have you, and so am I." Months passed, and SkyPath's reputation as the airline with heart continued to grow. Chloe's leadership brought new ideas and initiatives, from empathy-focused workshops for employees to collaborations with other organizations interested in promoting kindness. Each program added to SkyPath's identity as a company rooted in compassion. One evening, as Chloe and Ethan reflected on the journey they had taken together, Chloe mentioned a new idea she had been considering. "Dad, I was thinking, what if we create an annual event, something that celebrates kindness on a global scale? We could call it SkyPath's Global Day of Kindness, encouraging people everywhere to share acts of compassion, no matter where they are," Chloe suggested. Ethan's eyes lit up. "That's a beautiful idea, Chloe. Kindness is universal. It's something that connects us all." Together, they outlined a plan for SkyPath's Global Day of Kindness, a day when people around the world would be encouraged to share stories of empathy, inspire one another, and build bridges of understanding. They envisioned schools, workplaces, and communities participating in acts of kindness, creating a wave of compassion that would spread far beyond the airline. As they worked late into the night, Ethan felt a sense of completeness, knowing that the legacy of the Kindness Connection would live on through Chloe's vision. SkyPath had become more than a company. It was a movement, one that would continue to inspire generations long after their time. On the first SkyPath Global Day of Kindness, Chloe and Ethan stood together at SkyPath's headquarters, watching as people around the world joined in the celebration. Social media was flooded with stories, photos, and videos of acts of compassion, from small gestures like offering a helping hand to strangers to community-driven efforts that brought people together. As the day unfolded, Chloe felt the full weight of what she and her father had accomplished. SkyPath had grown into a global symbol of compassion, a reminder that kindness could transform lives and create lasting change. Ethan placed an arm around Chloe's shoulders, a proud smile on his face. "You did it, Chloe. We did it." Chloe looked up at him, her heart filled with gratitude and determination. "This is only the beginning, Dad. There's so much more we can do, and I promise to keep building on everything you taught me." As they watched the sun set over the bustling terminal, they knew that Skypath's journey would continue, soaring above the clouds, carrying a legacy of kindness, one act at a time. Together, they had created something enduring, a movement that would inspire people worldwide to lead with empathy, compassion, and respect. The world was a little brighter, and they knew that as long as there were people willing to share kindness, the legacy of Skypath would live on. If you enjoyed this story of kindness and connection, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Here, we share inspiring stories that remind us of the power of compassion, resilience, and a little kindness. Join our community to stay connected and be the first to hear our latest stories. Thanks for watching, and remember, every small act of kindness counts. See you in the next video.